Hey everyone, it's your buddy and your pal, Karnecks Star Wars Armada Explained. As promised, I'm going to be going into the project that I've been working on. I've been working on this project since June, pretty sure. It's been a concept since even before then. And this project I've been doing is that with all these rules and interactions in Armada, even with the videos that I make and as much as I try to remember, I was having a hard time just like, oh yeah, what was that thing again? And then I'd have to dig through pages and pages of material to try to find it. And like, it was like, man, I really wish that FFG would just have like a manual, like a book that just shows every interaction in the game, which of course that's ridiculous to demand of them. They don't have the time, manpower, or resources to do something like that. So I was just like, well, why don't I make one? Why don't I make a reference manual that goes through and looks at all the cards and tries to put that all down on paper? Because especially when you're at a tournament, sometimes it's really hard to prove like a point of view of like, no, you can actually do this because of this. And in a tournament, you're in a time crunch, and so sometimes you just can't take all those steps to do that. And so I have made a reference manual for Star Wars Armada. I've been working on it again since June of last year. I'm trying to have it completely finished before Worlds. It is hundreds and hundreds of pages. I think last time I counted it were over 350 pages. There's still more pages to be done, but I have everything done except for officers, which is split up into regular generic officers and then faction specific officers. I don't have squadrons done, and I don't have the titles done. I also am going in and doing interactions, as you can see, like weapons teams and the boarding teams. I have everything else done except going in and like shoring up some additional things like in damage cards or defensive tokens, or in the obstacles, for instance. Like obstacles is definitely the one I haven't touched on very much yet. And objectives, haven't done objectives at all. Because for the most part, I know that that's going to take me a really long time. But everything else, so to give an example, like, well, what do you mean by card interactions? What do you mean by having to remember stuff? Well, let's just jump right in to commanders. So commanders, there are, how many pages do I have in commanders? I think I have like 17, 18, nope. Number keeps going. I have 30 pages of materials for commanders been released right now. And so the goal of this is to go through and lay out not only what their card text says, but also anything from the FAQ or any other sources we have, like the rules forum where they've given official answers or official emails, etc. Putting that all on here, quoting it out. You're not having to dig forever to try to find where these materials are. And I do want to stress, let me actually back up here. I do want to stress that this is an alpha release, is what I'm calling it. By no means is it complete. There are definitely things that are still going to revisions. I update this about once a week. I'm going to provide a link so you guys can access it if you want to take a look yourselves at everything. I do want to stress that these are my own personal interpretations. They do not reflect Fantasy Flight Games in any way. It does not commit them or lock them into these rulings or anything like that. Everyone, each judge has their own interpretation of some of these rules. I am just doing the best I can to at least lay everything out on the table for you so that some players and judges are at least aware of what can potentially happen with these cards. And at least then when they look, they could scroll down and look at it and be like, oh, well, this is what he says about this thing. I don't quite agree with that. I think it's this way. That's totally fine. Okay? That's your prerogative as a judge. All I'm saying is, if I was forced to make a ruling, here's my steps of explanation. And again, it's laid all out there so anybody can be a judge. Because that's the hardest thing about Armada, is that so much of this material that I gathered, it was just word of mouth. It was not written anywhere. And again, the Star Wars Armada Discord, I want to thank Ian Cross, who's the previous World's Judge, Dre's Nida, Rasp, Gilded, Snapfist, Truth, and there's just Biggs and Schmitty and just dozens and dozens of other people that I would go to this channel and I'd be like, well, what about these interactions? And they've been helping me and continuously helping me solve these questions of well, what if that this could happen? So that is, and I'm calling it the Armada Reference Manual. And again, this is provided to the community at large just to try to help people understand more about this game. And again, don't take my word for it. If you do have questions about something that I've written, you can always jump on my Star Wars Armada Explained Discord, talk to me about it. You can go to the FFG rules forums and make posts there if you want. I see those. I can go read those as well. So yeah, the goal is one day. Not one day, but at Worlds, I want to show up with like the thick. Like I want to print it all out as a book, and I want to take this book to Worlds and just throw it down on the table and just be like, this is the book. And other people, you cannot read from the book, and then a mummy shows up and starts killing everybody. I don't know who Brendan Fraser would be in that situation, but it would be somebody way cooler than me. But anyway, let's get back to what I was talking about with Commander. So, for example, I try to have like stuff written up at the top about like, what you need to have for these cards, or if there's anything specifically related to like the icons or anything. Let's go through Akbar. Like for example, it says on here, I try to give like a plainsman interpretation in some of the first few dots, and then I go through other interactions with other cards. If Akbar essentially is before you make any attacks, you say, hey, do I want to attack only from my left or right hull zones? If I do, I can add 2 red dice to my attack pool while attacking. And so this goes through and clarifies. It's like, okay, well, before an activated ship declares its attack, you must choose if you want to use Akbar's ability. And then I make notes like, this will prevent you from using other attacks from your front or rear hull zones with cards such as like ordnance pods. And you say I have everything color-coded. Everything is color-coded. So when you see, for example, this maroon for commanders, that's commander card. If you see this brown for weapons team, it's a weapons team card. Purple, ordnance cards. So that way, when you're going through, you can quickly pick out like, oh, that color word means for this card, and maybe I need to go to this card in the section and look up what that says. Maybe it has something else written in there. And so I'm trying to make it really easy to also, I'm putting information, not only, for example, where it says here with the ordnance pods of Akbar, I take that whole thing, I also put it under ordnance pods. So you don't have to flip back and forth between all the material. I'm trying to have everything right there for any cards involved in the interaction. So again, you're not wasting time having to flip through pages and pages of material to find what you're looking for. So again, you can see here I have it written out on the second block. I try to make it in layman's terms. It's not the rules correct wording for it. It's just mainly just trying to put it in as plain words as possible. Like, this is how the card works. And depending on the situation of that card, sometimes I will follow exactly what the card is saying, but in some interpretations you see, I'm just trying to lay it out as like, this is what this card actually is saying and what it means. Obviously, you still want to follow the actual written card text for when making rulings. It's just, this is the layman's terms. And it also goes through things like, example, the ships that have chosen Akbar's ability. Can they claim fire lane tokens with their front and rear ship batteries? Yes, they can. However, Akbar's ability does not increase a ship's battery armament, so you can't use those extra dice that you would get to claim fire tokens because you're not actually making an attack. So, some situations, like for example, it says here, what about the case of Akbar and quad laser turrets? How does that interaction work? And I lay out like, there's some controversy. This is my personal ruling. So that's, again, going through, like, for example, Constantine. You can see, for example, some things you might never consider with Constantine. Like, for example, Thruster Fisher. How does he work with Grand Inquisitor? Can he trigger off some other effects or abilities? No. Mahdi is very straightforward. Mahdi is Mahdi. But as we scroll down, you'll see that I get more in depth. Like, for example, Admiral Piet. You can see here with Admiral Piet, just so much text is there for him. And not just for him, now we get to Rattus. And look at all the interactions for Rattus that I have discovered in this game. And not only just Rattus, if we keep scrolling down, we can find, let's see here, where's Thrawn on here? Riken was like 2 pages. Yeah, Riken had a lot there. tag, here we go. Here's Thrawn, and here's all of the Thrawn interactions. So many Thrawn interactions. And again, this is so much stuff that when people are normally playing the game, as you can see, like, there's just no way you can remember that 100% of the time. So for me, when I do judging, it just makes it easy for me to write that knowledge down. So if I'm having a moment of like, derp, I don't remember how this interaction works, I can just go to my manual, flip it open, and be like, oh yeah, now I remember how all this works out. And again, you can see there as we've been scrolling through, stuff is color-coded. It's all separated out nice and cleanly. So you can see like how things are working. And if there are times where I need to like walk through some steps on how something works, like for example, let's go to turbo lasers. So turbo lasers, let's use like linked turbo laser towers for an example. How does linked turbo laser towers work when attacking proximity mine tokens? Well, you see here I have steps laid out for how this card works when attacking a proximity mine token, because some people will think, oh, it either is or it isn't. It's like, well, actually, it's kind of both. And LTT, I've got it there written out about how you make this card work according to this, because of how tokens and how is it a squadron and not a squadron, and this, that, and the other thing. But again, all the cards laid out. And again, still working on squadrons, although you'll still find like some like notes and text in here, because I leave my notes in there. Like if I get to working on stuff, I'll just leave it in there. But you'll see that I'll have, like, for example, where's Squadrons Rebel. So if you go in here, for example, you're going to see that I already have some notes for Lando, about how Lando's die can't be modified. Like for targeting scrambler, I thought I also had a note in there about how it can't be scattered. But, again, like, just because I haven't done these sections doesn't mean that you still won't find notes in these sections. And again, if you go to things like damage cards, like I have stuff in there for everything I've discovered thus far about what cards or other abilities affect damage cards being drawn. So you see here I have a bunch of rulings about, this damage card, for example. Before you reveal a command, you must suffer 1 damage or discard that dial. If you discard it, do not reveal a dial this round. It's like, well, that damage, for example, doesn't affect Grand Admiral Thrawn's dial, because that dial is gained, not revealed. This damage card does not affect the Pursuant title. However, if the ship revealing that dial discards it before it's revealed, you actually cannot trigger Pursuant. So that's stuff that I've been reading and finding out that, like, goes along with things you might not otherwise think about or even know about. Again, faulty countermeasures has a ton of stuff there, and just going through so many cards and so many interactions, not only just for damage cards, but again, if you go into defense tokens, you'll see I'll have laid out in there like what currently affects defense tokens and what cards and abilities, etc. And yeah, that is my Armada reference manual. Like I said, it's taken tons and tons of work, so much more left to do. I work on it in my spare time. I try to update these pages whenever I update things at least once a week or so. But yeah, so that is it. That's my project. And it's under my own time, my own directive. Again, I'm still making sure that I am asking people to go through, like, proofreading is important. Also, there's some cases where, like, maybe I've laid out a sentence, and even though it makes sense to me, it doesn't make sense to other people. I might need to go back through and rework how a sentence does stuff. But yeah, so leave your thoughts and comments. What do you think about this manual? Do you think FFG should have something official like this for their games? And again, I understand why they don't have one, because it's just so much work and it's a lot of time, effort, and they don't want to pay people for this. But I would like to think that having something like this as a community of people got together and said, this is a supplemental thing you can look at. Obviously, don't use it for everything, but I don't know. I just want to provide a resource to the community because I understand you don't have half an hour to sit down and watch a video about something. You don't have, like, for example, that proximity mines video that I did. That was a half-hour long video where I explain a lot of things and go over a couple of other examples, but then I have managed to condense that down to proximity mines here. You can see it's still a lot of text to read through. So much text for proximity mines, but at least it's all there. And again, you're not having to spend a half hour looking to understand something. It's all right there, so you can read it as well. Because for me, I'm a visual learner. Like, I like seeing things, and that's how I understand. But if I have both the visual and the text to read through at the same time, like, I understand things so well. And again, that's what I'm trying to accomplish with this, is providing written wording from my videos. And again, making sure that I'm conversing with other judges, other smart people, definitely people who are smarter than me, and making sure I'm trying to present this all out correctly. Stuff updates all the time, just because that's just the nature of Armada. So, yeah, that's my project. I don't think there's anything else I really had to go over. I'm going to give you guys the link in the video. You guys can go check it out. You can leave your feedback and comments. And I really just hope that this is going to help some people going into Prime season, if they need some assistance understanding rules and knowing what's going on with things. But you all are fantastic. You're great. Appreciate you following me for almost a year now. January will be a year for my channel. I don't know what I'm going to do to celebrate. I'm sure I'll come up with something. But hey, I'll catch you guys all next time.